It has almost been 6 months to the day since I picked up my 2026 Volkswagen Tiguan SEL R-Line Turbo to be this channel's year-long tester. And in that time, I've owned 2 of these. Also, there's been software issues and glitches, and we've had a software update that seems to have addressed all the weak points for this vehicle. Well, 6 months into ownership, there's a few things that I would like to change about this vehicle, or I would like to see Volkswagen change in future model years. Now, as you guys know, getting me into this vehicle, I felt it was the best compact crossover money could buy, right? GTI-like performance with that engine. You also have a lot of technology and luxury features that kind of embarrasses a lot of vehicles in this class. But during my ownership period, there are some things that are starting to get to me. And in today's video, we're going to go over what those things are. And hopefully, Volkswagen addresses these issues with a mid-cycle refresh in a couple of years. Before diving into the 5 things I would change out of my 2026 Volkswagen Tiguan SEL R-Line Turbo, we got to begin with an honorable mention. And that is the auto vehicle hold function, or lack thereof. The amount of comments I have received over the past 6 months is astonishing, because a lot of people really want to see auto vehicle hold out of their daily drivers. And up to this point, we have not seen that implemented into the Volkswagen Tiguan, regardless of the 2025, 2026 model, and regardless of trim. I think a lot of you would be upset with me if I didn't bring this up as a change or as an addition to this generation. Well, thankfully, for 2027, Volkswagen is going to drop in the auto vehicle hold function for all trims, whether it's the S or SEL R-Line Turbo. So it's great to see that Volkswagen is listening to their customers, and they're listening to the criticisms for this generation. Now, the first thing I would change would be a digital rearview mirror. I'd like to see that being added into the SEL R-Line Turbo. Now, most people are going to be like, this is unnecessary. But is massaging seats under $50,000 necessary? Is ambient lighting in this vehicle necessary? I don't know. I think having a digital rearview mirror isn't out of the realm of possibility, or I'm not asking too much here. A couple of weeks ago, a good friend of mine and I went to a computer store. I needed a new PC to edit these videos in 4K. I needed a new gaming chair, and also my friend purchased 2 40-inch monitors. We were able to fit everything in this crossover. I would argue easily. My friend would say otherwise. And with all those boxes in the back, I had limited visibility. And I turned to my friend and I said, I wish I had a digital rearview mirror. And he's like, Mike, you know very well in this market, because he's a car guy, you're not going to have a digital rearview mirror. And I said, but it's a $45,000 vehicle. A digital rearview mirror would go a long way. And he's like, you should just purchase a larger SUV or a more expensive SUV if you wanted that. But for an additional $1,000 to $1,500, I think it adds some value here. When you do have kids and adults in the second row, visibility is still pretty good. But you want to have that visibility. You want to have that safety, more importantly. And I think a digital rearview mirror would bring that, would provide that. And I don't think this is a change that I'm asking too much. But when it comes to pricing, though, because you're adding an additional $1,000 to $1,500 based off of other vehicles in this class and 3-row crossovers that offer it as an option, now you're spending close to $47,000. Maybe that turns off some buyers. So I can see that be an option for future model years. Now, the next thing I would change is the ergonomics of this infotainment system. And it begins with the dashboard and even the center console itself. So on the dashboard, there is no physical buttons. And I want to apologize, because I'm one of the journalists that complained about this in the Mark 8 GTI. But next to your center-mounted air vents up front, there used to be buttons, or at least in the Mark 8 GTI there was, where it would be for your climate control settings, your drive mode selector, and I think your parking assist features. I think. This is all based off of memory, but I know there were buttons there. We don't have that out of the Volkswagen Tiguan. And instead, everything is accessed through the infotainment system or the scroll wheel. More on the scroll wheel in a minute. Also, with the camera systems, aside from your parking tab on the infotainment system, there is no button on the dashboard, on the center console, that allows you quick access to see your camera systems. And I would love to see that added into future model years, alongside other buttons as well, which again, journalists did complain about a couple of years ago with the Mark 8. So maybe Volkswagen isn't too quick to change back to what everyone complained about, at least on YouTube. But living with this vehicle for 6 months, I see the need for touch-sensitive haptic feedback or physical buttons for this dashboard. Next up is the scroll wheel on the center console. Now, out of this scroll wheel, it functions for your drive mode selector and your volume knob. I think on lower trims with front-wheel drive, you don't have a drive mode selector at all. I'd have to take a deeper dive into that, but I've never encountered a front-wheel drive Tiguan for this generation, so I can't say for certain. But with the scroll wheel, I want to see it retuned or repurposed, for a lack of a better term. And instead of just being for your volume knob, instead of just being for your drive mode selector, I want to see the scroll wheel also control your infotainment system. So that way, when you're going through different menus, different tabs, different layouts, you can access all that very conveniently and quickly. Now, one of my complaints, which I haven't seen a lot of people talk about with the SEL R-Line Turbo, is that when you want to access your radio stations and you see what is in your area, what has been pre-programmed, okay, you have buttons on the steering wheel to do that. But if you want to see something that isn't programmed into your radio and you're driving, you'll get a pop-up warning saying you can't use this screen because it's not safe. Focus on the road. And I'm thinking to myself, with a 15.5-inch touchscreen where I can't have dual functionality because I don't have the scroll wheel doing that for me, I have to keep my eyes on the road. I can't change up my radio in this format that I want to, and then when that menu pops up or that warning pops up, I can't control my climate control, I can't control anything with the touchscreen. If that's the case, the scroll wheel has to have a multi-purpose to it. It can't just be for the drive mode, it can't just be for your volume. It needs to also control your infotainment system, much like we see with BMW, Cadillac, and even Infiniti. And maybe, just maybe, with this center console, giving us more buttons would be the proper choice, would be the right choice here for this vehicle, making it more ergonomic, making it more user-friendly, making it more convenient. Also for this center console, and this is not going to be a complaint that I think a lot of you are going to have, is this center storage compartment. Now, I like the fact that the armrest is adjustable, so I can have it really where I want it to be, and that way I can just relax on a longer drive. Love it. But when you put this armrest up, it exposes the compartment beneath it. And I have business cards in this compartment. And if you have the windows open, it's not hot enough to have the AC on, it's not cold enough to have the heat on, and you want to open up your moonroof, open up your side windows, the cards or whatever's in this compartment fly out. I'll have these items fly out onto my lap on the center console, and I'm like, oh, come on. And also another thing, too, is that I would like to see this center console or this center storage compartment be a center storage compartment. Rather than this futuristic EV-like compartment, just give us a conventional storage compartment, please. I think it would be nice to have in this crossover. The fact there's enough space where I could probably store a couple smaller water bottles, love to see it. But if I'm going to have a compartment here where I can store some cards or anything like that, I don't want those items flying out in front of me while I'm driving. But that's probably just a me problem, a personal thing, but I would like to see the center console in general be fixed. Whoever came up with the phrase GTI of crossovers when pertaining to the SEL R-Line Turbo should probably have their press credentials revoked for at least 6 months, because it wasn't Volkswagen that made these claims. When you write headlines like that, you set a narrative. You create a false perception of what this particular vehicle is all about, and maybe, just maybe, sets the expectations really high when hopping into this crossover. Because when you think GTI of crossovers, you're probably going to have this idea it's going to be fun, it's going to be athletic, agile, sports-tuned suspension. And I don't even know, after 6 months of driving this thing around, if it reaches any of those, if it checks off any of those boxes. Because yes, it is going to be a bit more fun than the other trims, 268 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque. But without a sports-tuned suspension, it is not a GTI. I think the only vehicle that would come close in the Volkswagen Audi family for a vehicle of this size would be the SQ5 at like $70,000, I think $65,000, well above 45 grand for this model. Now, if you guys have watched a number of my videos for this crossover, you know that I am not a huge fan of this suspension. Mostly because when you are in the city, when you're going over bumps and imperfections, it can be rather stiff, it can be rather rigid, and it is not the most comfortable crossover out there to drive. On back roads, on the highway, it is phenomenal. And because of this, I think Volkswagen needs to adjust the dampers for the Tiguan SEL R-Line Turbo. This isn't an SQ5, this isn't a GTI on stilts, because all your connectivity is coming from the steering input. So when you are in a corner, you feel connected because of the steering, not because of the suspension. If you take a corner sharp enough or fast enough, you're going to start feeling that body roll. And that's where the disconnectivity comes into play. And that's where I would say this is not an agile or great handling crossover by any stretch of the imagination. I'd actually argue the Mazda CX-50 would be the better choice if you are looking for a fun daily driver. Because of this, Volkswagen needs to soften the dampers, make it a bit more softer so that when you are driving in the city, when you are, going to work, it is going to be a pleasurable driving experience. It is going to be a comfortable driving experience, matching the leather seats and the massaging seats. Because when you are in stop and go traffic, or even right now, I'm about 20 miles west of Boston, there are bumps, there are imperfections. And every single imperfection I feel. I get that jolt. And you also hear it too. And that's where at times I kind of cringe. And why I do avoid the city with this crossover. I think that if you soften the dampers with the Tiguan for this trim, you make it a bit softer, more comfortable, rides quieter, now you're looking at a true luxury crossover in terms of its performance, in terms of its on-road driving characteristics. But on the other side of the equation, its stiffer suspension is what allows it to be a great highway cruiser, a great back road driver. So maybe it changes up the characteristics of this crossover entirely, and then in 2027 or 2028, I'm sitting here complaining about how this vehicle doesn't feel as sporty as it once did. But I think that it's worth taking that approach if this vehicle is not going to be the GTI of crossovers. The last thing I would change out of the Volkswagen Tiguan SEL R-Line Turbo, and I'm probably being a dead horse at this point, is we do need a 7-speed dual clutch. Now I know there are people who disagree with me very strongly on this, that they prefer the 8-speed automatic because it's not clunky, and that it's smoother than a 7-speed dual clutch. But Audi has kind of proven that theory wrong out of the Q3 and Q5. Because the 7-speed dual clutch in the new Q3, I really like. It's not clunky like a Mark 7.5 GTI. The only reason why I'm saying this is because Volkswagen has done this in the past. If you take a look at what this Volkswagen Tiguan is offering with the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, 268 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, it is identical to the Volkswagen Arteon. Finding that out tells me the Tiguan is supposed to be a mainstream crossover alternative to that Arteon. Volkswagen got the Arteon right. They made an Audi Q7 for the masses. They made an Audi Q7 that was affordable. And I remember saying that many years ago when I got the opportunity to review one. And then, near the end of its life cycle, Volkswagen gives the Arteon 300 horsepower and a 7-speed dual clutch. Now, I don't think Volkswagen will tune this turbo for the 300 horsepower out of the Tiguan. I just don't think that's going to happen. But dropping in a 7-speed dual clutch would make this crossover feel so much better. It would drive better. And sure, with a 24TT software update for the ECM, it did make this transmission perform better, especially on the lower end, with the first 2 to 3 gears. It still gear hunts though. And sport mode to me just isn't that fun. And that kind of leads me back to my first mechanical change, and that would be the softer dampers. Because if this isn't going to be a sports crossover, then there is no point in having a stiffer suspension. And then there's no point in dropping in a 7-speed dual clutch. So it's one way or the other with this vehicle. It's either going to be a luxury crossover that comes in at $45,000, or it's going to be one of those crossovers that can straddle the line, that it can do both, similar to a Q5 in some ways. But I don't think Volkswagen is going to be willing to do that, because that will cost them a lot of money at the end of the day. That will force the Volkswagen Tiguan to come in at close to 50 grand. And that's why it's going to be one or the other. You either give us a 7-speed dual clutch with this current suspension that is rather stiff, or you go softer and make this a luxury crossover. And after 6 months of owning this crossover, putting on close to 6,000 miles in total with my first Tiguan and the second one, that's a direction I would lean towards. Luxury over performance. And that, I think, is the proper direction for this vehicle to be a great all-arounder in this class. So guys, let me know what your changes would be for the SEL R-Line Turbo or the Volkswagen Tiguan in general. Is there anything I missed? Is there anything that I'm not experiencing that you guys are, that you would say, you know what? We need to see Volkswagen address this problem. We need to see Volkswagen make some changes to the interior or maybe even the driving dynamics out of this crossover. Let me know in the comment section below. But guys, once again, thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I will see you guys next time.